Hello, friends. I'm Mrs. Hood, and welcome to Teachers of All Kinds. TAC is a podcast where teachers can benefit one another by sharing our unique experiences as individuals who also happen to be teachers. My guest for this episode of the podcast is Kim Lepre. Kim is the host of the Teachers Need Teachers podcast, teachersneedteachers.com, helping beginning teachers navigate their new field. She taught band for 10 years and has been teaching English language arts for almost a decade. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I hope you do too. By the way, you can find Teachers of All Kinds on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And now, on to episode 8. Okay, and we're on. Hi, Kim. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much.
Great. So let's get started. I had a few questions for you. My first question is, your work seems to focus on new teacher support. When you were a new teacher, what did you struggle with, and what helped you get through the first few years?
In the beginning, I definitely struggled with imposter syndrome. And I felt like I went through this program to learn how to be a teacher, and then now here I am. I don't really know where I'm supposed to start. I have this whole binder full of lesson plans, but the assignment that you end up getting is rarely ever the one that you practice creating lessons for. So when I started out, I was teaching middle school band, and I had inherited this program. The previous teacher wasn't around for me to ask questions, so I had to kind of put everything together. I had to figure out, and with band it adds an extra layer with extracurricular and inventory. So there was that aspect of it. I also struggled with that fine line between being a fun teacher and almost not being their friend, but just being like too fun to the point where they didn't take me seriously, and I really liked the feeling of them liking me. And so a lot of times I sacrificed classroom management and pacing for the sake of keeping up that rapport. Now, don't get me wrong, they had a lot of fun in my class. I'm sure they still remember me, if they were to come across my path. But at the same time, I can't say that a whole lot of effective learning happened at that time. But I have to look back and forgive myself, because you can only do so many things well in the beginning. So I wish that I had someone to kind of just like take me under their wing and say, okay, you have these classes, you're teaching this. I really think that you should focus on this. This would be really helpful if you kind of started out with this. And then they would come in and maybe like check in with me and say, okay, so it's been a month, how are things going? So kind of like fine tune the process. When I moved to California, because I originally started in Washington, when I moved to California, I did have a mentor, and I did have to meet with him regularly. Okay. And I did get that part of it. But I know that there are a lot of teachers who don't get that, and they just pretty much have to wing it. And I think one of the problems that can also happen when you're winging it is you get discouraged, right? Because you feel like you're a failure the whole time, even though you're actually probably on the right track. And then sometimes we develop bad habits, because we are winging it. Maybe we're not as organized as we should be. Maybe our grading policies are not conducive to reflecting their actual learning, things like that. So those are like the things that I struggled with, and everything that I kind of talk about like on my podcast. I think about, okay, so in September when school started, what was I most worried about? Okay, I was worried about my syllabus, because they expect it, but what should I put on my syllabus? And if I don't put it on my syllabus, does that mean it's not bound, like legally bound? Or it just,
that's funny you bring up syllabi, because yeah, when I did my student teaching, the master teacher had this whole syllabus, like 4-page with a signature page at the end, detailing everything, and got the signature back from the parent and the student. And then when I went to my first school where I actually was my own teacher, the department head would just have just a generic one-page syllabus. He would just put the different class title at the top. He said, don't make them sign it, because then you have to like uphold what you say you're gonna do. And it was wildly different from my master teacher. And it's just funny the variety you see with syllabi. And now I don't know what my feelings on having a syllabus are, but I feel like they don't read it. So
Right. I think the parents do, because they want to know how you're going to run your classroom, especially, teaching 7th grade. It's such, it's a transitional year for kids. And a lot of parents have a lot of anxiety as well about, their kid being in middle school. So I try to outline, like attendance policies and homework policies and grading policies, just so that, because they have no clue. Their only reference is from when they were in middle school. Well, that was how many decades ago, so kind of giving them a refresher. And also things are different now. And so I think it's helpful for the parents. The students don't really care. You pretty much have to train them through experience, and give them a lot of time to make mistakes and learn. But it's the parents that want that legally binding document, so to speak. I mean, not really, but they want that document. They want it in writing so that they know what to expect from, they went from having 2 teachers, maybe 3, and now they have like 6 or 7 teachers. So I think it helps the parents out.
That's true. I agree. And I think also sending periodic communication home to remind parents about, what the expectations are is helpful too. And having that syllabus maybe posted on a website to reference would be good. But that's a good point. Yeah. And speaking to your what you said about having a mentor and having support when you're a new teacher, I feel like when I started, there were too many cooks in the kitchen. We had a program we had to go through my first year, except I started in January in the middle of the year, so I missed out on the first half, and they wouldn't let me do it the next year. So anyways, but it was this program we would go to once a week after school, where we would hear all these new ideas and different ways of doing things, and there were just too many suggestions. As one of my coworkers put it, I wish they would just tell us what to do instead of suggesting things all the time. Just tell us one way. And it was always like, well, I don't know which way is better. We have to experiment and see what kind of teacher we are through experience and make our own mistakes. So my experience is a little opposite, I feel like, but I think every new teacher needs to have a building mentor. Even if you're not a new teacher but starting in a new district, I think it's important to have a mentor to get to know that school's and that district's particular way of doing things too.
Right. I agree.
You feel all over again.
Right, because, and also, let's say if I were to go to another district, they may have scripted curriculum. Like in my district, we can pretty much do whatever we want. And so at other that's good and bad, because as a new teacher, it'd be nice to have something like a basis for something. I really advocate using other people's lessons and units and then seeing how they feel as you're teaching them and tweak them to make them your own, just kind of as a launching point. But if I were to go to another district that was scripted, I would definitely want to talk to someone and say, okay, so what does this look like on a daily basis? What's the expectation? What if I don't do it? What if I decide to veer off of it? And so that's why I agree with you in that having someone who is in the department, preferably in your building and in the department, try a good relationship with at least one person in your department, if not all of them. I mean, you kind of know who you vibe with, but I feel like when we isolate ourselves, it doesn't help our students at all. We don't learn because we only have our own lens. We're in our own bubble, and we have to go and talk to other teachers and see how they're doing that, and then try to see how we can incorporate some of those suggestions into our teaching.
Definitely. So, and then you also talked about the imposter syndrome. So that's like, I guess, I've never heard that applied to teaching before, but it makes sense. I mean, in my undergrad teacher preparation program, I feel like I was not adequately prepared. I was a deer in headlights when I first got in front of students.
Yeah, that's a common sentiment. I mean, because here we are, we were trained and we show up in the classroom, here's the keys to your classroom, it's all decorated to look like Pinterest, and there's the expectation because kids know what a teacher's supposed to be like.
Yes.
So they're going to expect me to be on my game. They're going to expect me to be confident, have classroom management, know my transitions, all of that. And I'm just as scared as they are, or at least in the beginning. You know, it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. Let's just roll this down the hill and see which way it goes.
But I think we also need to kind of journey with the students together. So every school year, it's a different environment because you have different kids. And it's like almost like being new to teaching all over again on that first day of school when you're building the norms with students and you're getting to know them. And I wonder how students feel when you're just kind of navigating together. I mean, they have those expectations of what a teacher should be like, but at the same time, you have the power to change those expectations and make it your own thing. So anyways.
And you can even change mid-year. So if you start off on the wrong foot, you don't have your classroom management set, the kids are running the classroom basically, and they're not listening to you. Yeah, and they're not listening. You can reset, and it's hard. I had a really difficult group of students last year, and I had to figure out why. I had to think about the personalities. I had to think about the seating. I had to think about my own biases in terms of like how kids should behave. Because that's huge. Like, was I looking for compliance? You know, so I had to think about that, and then I just had to restart from the beginning. I said, we're going to start all over, and this is how we're going to walk in the classroom. Not because I need you to be robots, but because I want us to come in with the intention of learning. So I want you to show me that you're ready to learn. If you're not ready to learn, we'll go outside. We'll line up like you did in elementary school, and we'll try again until we get that feeling of being ready to learn. And, you know, they got tired of that after a while. And after, you know, they just started to walk in, and yes, they still talked, but they weren't yelling across the room to each other. They would sit down, get their stuff out, and be ready. So just, you can reset and shift the mindset so that you can make sure that it's, you know, an optimal learning environment.
I think that's really beneficial for especially new teachers to hear, and even teachers in their first 20 years of teaching, because that you are kind of a veteran teacher and you still had a hard group of kids and needed to reset. You're not an expert just because you've taught for 5, 10, 15 years. Everyone still, it doesn't become super easy or, you know, just completely effortless after that time. I think that's really important for people to hear, is that it still takes work. Yeah.
It does.
So my next question is, you taught band for about a decade, right?
Yeah.
And then you switched to English language arts, which you've been teaching for almost a decade. How does teaching band, which is an extracurricular subject, differ from teaching a core subject, defined as a core subject, English language arts?
Well, for one, the students in band are self-selecting. So they choose to be there. I heavily recruit, so I still had huge numbers, but it's different because you know that they want to be there, as opposed to English, where that's a subject that a lot of people hate. Usually
not as much as math.
Well, they either hate English or math, and I still get the same amount of haters in English, and I turn them around. But you know, so they're stuck taking English is how a lot of them feel. There's a lot more involved in terms of extracurricular performances and practices with band. You're almost like running a mini school, because I have to think about fundraising and budgets, and I still had to think about curriculum. I had to think about traveling, and so I was like a little mini project manager over there in the band room, and there's really no one there to help you because you're an army of one, unless you can afford to have an assistant. PLC is kind of a joke, at least on site, because no one else can relate. Now, I did PLC with other band directors once a month. That kind of helped, but we just didn't get the same kind of support the way that I feel like core subject PLCs get. They have curriculum specialists just for English and math. But you're not going to have a band specialist at the district who's going to come and necessarily help you out with that. I would say that despite all that, it's actually less work. I didn't have to grade as much
or read as
much.
But
I did have to give up a lot of evenings for things like performances. And one of the reasons why I did leave is because it was starting to get to the point where I couldn't spend as much time with my family as I wanted to. And so that was just a choice, and I needed something new to also reinvigorate myself. I started to get a little bit stale, and I knew I either had to switch schools or switch subjects. I think that happens to a lot of people where they're just like, I'm kind of tired of teaching this. I kind of want to try something else, and that's totally okay. All I had to do was study for this test to get my credential, the supplemental for English, and now it was a new adventure. I felt new again. I felt like I was a new teacher, but I knew how to control my classroom, so it was kind of the best of both worlds.
And are you in middle school right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've done 2 years outside of middle school. The rest of the time has been all middle school.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So do you consider yourself a middle school teacher? Do you ascribe to that saying that you're either an elementary, middle, or high school teacher, and if you're one, you're not the others?
I kind of feel that way. Like I don't think I could teach high school, not because I'm not capable of it. I just really understand middle schoolers really well. And I think not everyone does, and that's why they don't want to teach middle school if they're not successful. You have to look at them in a different way. They're going through so much developmentally with their body, with their brains, emotionally, that I get them, and I use that to my advantage in the sense that when I give them a second or a third chance, because I know that they don't understand the concept of organization, it makes them feel good, whereas in high school, I'm expected to just be a little bit harder on them to teach them responsibility and prepare them for the real world. And I just don't know if I could adhere to that. I don't think I could. I think I'd be way too easy on them, and other teachers would resent me.
That's hilarious. That's interesting, hearing about your take on the difference between high school and middle school. I feel like myself, I'm more of a high school teacher. I taught 3.5 years at the high school level and 1 year at the middle school level. And I think I love both. Both has its pros and cons. But I feel like my experience before teaching, I worked with young adults with mental illnesses. And I feel like that translated well into teaching high school.
Right.
And I feel like middle school is a little bit more different from that. And I could get used to it, but I feel like to do my best work, I have to really be invested or really connect with students of that age group. And I feel like I could do either, but maybe high school is where it's at. I also love all the extracurricular that you can find in a high school, and that it's 4 years.
Yeah.
So anyhow. And then now I'm not sure what school district you're in, but I know San Diego Unified and LA Unified announced they're starting fall online.
Yep.
Recently, they
Yeah.
announced that, right? The last few weeks.
We're
What
doing
was
that
your
too.
reaction?
Relief.
Mm.
I I didn't sign up to be on the front lines.
Mm-hmm.
I did not sign up to be a soldier. I respect those who are,
Mm-hmm.
and we all chose our path, and I'm not going to be a sacrificial lamb. So I don't think that there's just any way that we can be in an enclosed classroom, even if I had half the number of kids. Let's say I only had 15 students,
Mm-hmm.
and I had all the PPE in the world. I just don't think that it could prevent me from getting it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd rather we be cautious, especially because in San Diego County we just keep getting so many cases. And where I teach down in the south of San Diego County, I mean, we're really close to the border. We have a lot of cases, like the most cases in San Diego County. So I don't want to put myself on the line. I don't think my students should be put on the line either. To say that, you can surviving it, that's not good enough for me, because what could be the lasting effects?
Nobody knows.
Exactly. And again, I'm not going to be the sacrificial lamb for that. That being said, teaching online is not going to be easy. We got our bell schedule, and basically we're blocked for 90 minutes for each period. And I'm still trying to work that out, because research shows that synchronous learning shouldn't happen more than half an hour at a time. So
Online synchronous learning or any synchronous learning?
well, like for each class. So
even in person, it shouldn't be more than half an hour?
Oh, no, they mean online.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. And so I agree. If I were to lecture for an hour and a half online, I met with my students over, quarantine, and we talked for half an hour at a time, and some of them they were ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of that half hour. It's a lot. So and my curriculum was lighter than it normally is during that time. So I'd have to think of like maybe a 30 minutes on, 30 minutes off to do the work that I've assigned, or maybe go into groups,
Breakout.
and then breakout groups and breakout rooms, and then come back into the class together. So I'm still trying to figure out what that's going to look like. I definitely think that teachers need to be online with their students, even if it's like 10-15 minutes. There's some teachers who are worried about, okay, well, I have my kids, I have my pets, I have other distractions, and I get that, and we're not expecting it to be perfect. It's going to be messy.
Right.
If your toddler runs into the room while you're trying to hold a lesson, the kids are going to understand that, because they probably have their toddler brother or sister screaming in their background. No one is expecting it to look like a classroom.
Yeah.
But we have to have that interaction with the teachers and the students. I feel like that's a non-negotiable regardless. Like, you have to figure it out. We have to work it out.
I saw a great thing from, it was called The Evolved Teacher on Instagram or Facebook. Have you heard of her?
I've heard, yeah.
Yeah. She taught in South Korea, I think, during 2 different epidemics, and she had some great suggestions for how to build rapport and build classroom culture online. And I'm trying to remember some of them, but one thing was online journals, which I was going to do anyways, even if we were going to be in person, like online dialogue journals between teacher and student. So on Google Docs, they could do an entry, and for math, it would be a little more content related, probably, but I would also have some little questions peppered in there, like, what's your favorite superhero? Or, getting to know you questions.
That's cool.
And that's one way to have that relationship. But I think you're right that there needs to be live interaction. And this past school year during the quarantine, even though I had asynchronous learning, I had all my math videos and math assignments outside of class time, and I reserved the class time just for checking in. So
Right.
I had students show up and I would ask them how they're doing and ask them more specific questions about how their week was going and answer any math questions they had. But it was kind of a little bit drop-in, which I think didn't serve the students as well. So I learned from that.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should require students to be there, and maybe, you can watch your math video together as a class. I don't know. It's going to take a lot of figuring out, that's for sure. But
Well, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think students will be patient and happy to see you,
They
and happy
will.
to see each other.
Yeah. And there are ways to get around it though. Like if you do, for example, Edpuzzle, I don't know if you've heard of that, where you could take your videos, and you can place little markers along the way where they have to answer a question. And that's how you know that it could just even be a comprehension question, just so you know that they watched it, and it'll tell you how long they've viewed the video. And you can keep the answers as a grade or not. It could be as simple as what was on the wall behind me. I don't know, just so that you know that they watched the video. So that's one way to do that.
Edpuzzle.
Edpuzzle, yeah. So, and they have, they can pull from YouTube or TED Talks or Khan Academy, and you just have to, and they also, I noticed that they have other people who will use that same video, and they've already come up with questions, and you can just reuse those questions. So you don't even have to come up with it on your own, but it's a nice way to make sure that students are participating.
That's a great idea. I'm definitely going to look into that. I also used in this past spring, I used Flipgrid. So students could make videos and reply to each other with videos. And I made it so I had to approve the video first, but I never had a problem with any of the videos. Students were great. And I just had a social time thread asking what's something positive you've been doing in the quarantine. And they can cover their face if they don't want to be seen, etc. But I thought it was a great platform. One student suggested Seesaw, but then some other students said everybody uses Seesaw, so it's really slow. Use Flipgrid. So I just continued using Flipgrid.
Oh, that's funny. I'm going to require them on certain assignments to show their face, but no one else can see it but me, because I need to get to learn their names.
Yes.
But if we do go, I should say when we do eventually go back in person, it's not like we're seeing each other for the first time. There's some kids who are totally, like my daughter does not want to show her face ever when she's in a class, but at some point her teachers need to know who she is. So I'm going to have some where they can reply to each other. You can put an emoji over your face if you want. And then other assignments, this back and forth, like what you were talking about, that you would do in a Google Doc, where they would answer the question, and then it would just go to me.
Yeah, that's definitely important. It's different from being with them half the year and then going to online. It's different starting online with new kids. How are we going to learn their names if we never see their faces? That's true too.
Something that I'm struggling with wrapping my brain around is I'm used to training them on technology in person and teaching them how to troubleshoot. And, middle school kids, something as simple as like an 8-digit birth date or their 7-digit ID, knowing, like writing that somewhere where they can remember it, just things like that. I have systems set up. Okay, we're all going to go in the Notes app and you're going to name it this. So, we use iPad. So if they're watching a how-to video on the iPad, that's pretty hard to then implement it while also on the iPad. It's so much easier when they had a human, and demonstrating that. So I'm kind of worried that the first couple weeks, maybe in the first 3 weeks, it's going to be a lot of relationship building and team building, but also so much training on the technology, like even more than I had to do before.
Absolutely. I think, and just getting technology to students, even if they have one-to-one iPads or Chromebooks, some of them don't have internet at home. So hopefully it'll be smoother than it was in the spring, but we'll see. My, well, in Washington and Oregon, they haven't announced yet whether they'll be online in the fall. Currently, they're planning on, half the students Monday, Tuesday, half the students Thursday, Friday, clean on Wednesdays for some of the districts.
Yeah.
But the Washington Union came out in favor of starting online in the fall, so we'll see. It should be announced soon, I would think.
Right.
So,
which one do you prefer?
Which do I prefer?
Yeah.
Actually, if I have the choice for myself only, I would be in person.
Right.
I'm not super scared or concerned because I think I may have already had it.
Oh, okay.
For one thing. So, and I'm also just not, I don't know, but it's not my decision and I don't want to decide for other teachers.
Right.
Most teachers seem to be wanting to do online to be safe, which makes sense. My mother is immunocompromised. She has leukemia, but she's in San Diego and I'm in Washington.
Yeah, so that's not an issue then.
So it's not much of an issue unless I taught and then went and visited her, but I would keep my social distance. So anyways, my personal choice would be to be in person with kids who decided to be in person. I like that they're giving parents the option of being online. Yeah. So that's my 2 cents, but we'll see what happens. During this quarantine, has it offered you any kind of, silver lining of spending more time with your family? Or, because that's what I've found is that I'm valuing the extra time with my husband. So that's been my silver lining for it.
I agree. I've actually been very zen this whole time. It's nice to wake up with the sun and, not have to set an alarm.
Yes.
It's nice to definitely spend more time with my daughter. We did hunker down during the beginning of the quarantine when we were supposed to, so we weren't really going out except when I would have to make grocery store runs. But, now we're being safe about it. And it's just nice to have the mental space to not have to think about a lot of stuff. Even when I was teaching, it just felt so much more relaxed.
Yes.
I didn't feel so busy like I would in person. And that also made me reevaluate, why did I make everything so busy? Like, it made me think about how I run my classroom. And even when we go back in person, does it need to be that way? Does it have to be so hard? I think sometimes we make things hard on ourselves. Like sometimes we feel the need to grade everything that the students do. Do we really need to grade, like collect everything? If I was in person, I would look over their shoulder and read it, or use something like Nearpod where they will answer in real time and I can just scan and see their answers. And that'll give me some formative feedback right there. So, I think it's important that we know that we have this opportunity to revise how we run our classrooms so that we don't feel so burnt out. There's just too many teachers burning out. So if we stop making more work for ourselves, but still getting the same amount of data and still giving feedback to the students, I think that this whole thing could be a silver lining.
Definitely. I think it's making everyone rethink their life and their career and a lot of different parts of their life, not just teachers, but especially as a teacher who worked from home. I agree with you that it made me think about, why do I need to be so busy? I mean, I did my master's degree the last 2 years. I graduated in summer 2019, but I was doing it while teaching for my third and fourth year of teaching, while owning a tutoring business as well. Now that I'm done with my master's degree, I started a podcast, and I'm doing that while owning the tutoring company and teaching. But I just love being busy, but an extreme amount is not necessary.
Yeah.
I agree. We don't have to grade every single thing students do. We need to teach them to be kind of more responsible for themselves and not just accountable, externally, but also internally.
Right.
So let's see. You also have a podcast, Teachers Need Teachers.
Right.
So when did you start it and why?
Summer of 2018.
Oh, okay. That's recent.
Right. Yeah. I started it because I had been blogging since about 2016, and I was doing that consistently, and I kind of got tired of blogging. But I still wanted to disseminate this information just through a different modality. And I had heard about podcasts. I listened to podcasts all the time. And I was like, I could do this. I'm really good at learning technology quickly and picking that stuff up. I bet this isn't as hard as I think it is. And when I get an idea in my head, I go down the rabbit hole. I got all the good equipment, and I wanted to do it right. And then it wasn't that hard to get guests on my podcast either. So I did the interview series, and that was like pretty early on in my podcast, where I interviewed principals across the country, and I had them interview me as if I was applying for a job, and they weren't allowed to give me the questions ahead of time. And I had to see how I would do on the fly. So that was really cool. And I still get emails from people that are saying, I used that to prep me for this job interview and I got it. So, and that was fun. So it's been a lot of fun. It's on hiatus right now, and I should be starting it up soon, probably after I get through the first month of online teaching. So I'm thinking more into September.
Are you blogging while it's on hiatus, or you don't blog?
I am doing nothing. It's been great.
Very zen. Yeah. That's wonderful. And that's really cool that you did the interview series. I'll have to check that out for sure. And so you started it with the notion that it was for new teachers, right? So what made you, in your blog, did you focus on new teachers as well when you started your blog?
Yeah.
And what made you do that? What made you focus on new teachers?
I was a beginning teacher mentor in my district. So even though you go through your credentialing program in California, you still have to go through another program in your district to clear your credential completely. So it's more like hands-on apprentice type thing. So you meet with a mentor, and the mentor observes you, you go over lessons and all of that. So I was a mentor, and I thought, I can't mentor everyone, but I've made a lot of mistakes, and I want people to learn about those and also be reassured knowing that you can overcome those mistakes, and here's how. And I've always been very mindful in terms of like analyzing how I do things and why I make the mistakes and how I can do better. So it just was a natural fit for me to focus on new teachers, because they were always telling me I was seeing what they were struggling with. And I use that as content on both the blog and the podcast. But I still get veteran teachers who come and listen to the podcast as well. And they email me letting me know that they're like, I've been teaching for 15 years, but I still got some ideas from your podcast. And, I'm glad you didn't burn out. I had an episode about how I thought about quitting teaching. And so it's been great to just share it and just get everything out of my brain. I don't want to write a book. I'm not an author. We'll see. By the time I get to the end of a blog post, I just feel like I've run a marathon. So the thought of writing like 20 blog posts, I don't know, it just seems like a bit much.
Mm-hmm. That's funny. That's fantastic that there's such a strong mentorship program in California, or at least in the school district you were in.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what was I going to ask you? Shoot. You were talking about blogging and new teachers, and I don't remember what I was going to ask you. So let's see. You had mentioned when we talked before that it was important to protect our personal time as teachers, and we talked a little bit about, reevaluating how busy we are with COVID,
Mm-hmm.
forcing us to see what life would be like if we weren't so busy. In a normal time, how did you protect your personal time?
I scheduled every minute of my workday.
Mm.
So, for example, on Sunday, I would plan out what I needed to do during my prep.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I understand, and this is strange, but not all teachers have a planning period.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, really? How do you get that done? So I would make sure. I'm sorry?
Isn't that by choice if they take on like an extra class contract? Or
there's that, but there's also some schools where they don't get one, or it's like half an hour. So even more so than I feel like you have to plan every minute of your prep, because in the beginning I would just be like on social media or reading the news or decompressing. And that meant that I had to do so much work after school and at home. And I thought, this isn't conducive to this. During my lunch, I'll take my break. Mm-hmm. I'll eat my lunch. I really believe in socializing with other teachers during your lunch. Yeah. It's where we kind of empty our cup so that, we can be fresh for the end of the day. But otherwise, during my prep period, I know if on Tuesday I have my prep, whether I need to make copies, if I need to grade and how many things I need to grade. Mm-hmm. Just all of that little stuff, planning lessons, looking for resources. If I have to grade like a major assignment, like essays take a long time to grade, then I know, all right, so I'm going to spend 4 hours on Saturday and that's it. Mm-hmm. And that's it. And usually it's not a problem because, my family, they're maybe not getting up early on a Saturday. So I just take, I'll get up a little bit earlier and take those 4 hours for myself before the day begins. So I just made sure that I did as much as I could cram into the school day. Mm-hmm. And brought very little home. So sometimes what I would take home would be getting set up or loading things into Google Classroom for the next day. Or maybe there are a couple of emails that I didn't get back to. Or sometimes I'll call parents in the evening because they're at work and I couldn't get a hold of them during the day. But otherwise, I believe in working during the hours you're getting paid as much as possible.
Definitely. Let's talk a little bit about parent contact. During quarantine, I set up a Google Voice account so that I could text parents and students.
Yeah.
That worked so well because everybody texts these days. And, I wouldn't use my regular number.
Right. Oh, no.
That would be weird. But it really worked well to have a Google Voice number, and it kept everything separate from, kept all the text separate from my regular text.
Yep.
And I was able to call people and receive calls. It was great. I had about 60% of parents, I had heard from them before quarantine at least once during the school year. And after quarantine happened and I started reaching out more and more, it went up another 18% to 78% of families I had heard from at least once. So I thought that was really successful. And, in the past, one of my weaknesses has been contacting parents as soon as someone falls academically behind. Mm-hmm. So I was really working on that and trying to increase my parent contact. What's your reaction to that? What do you think about texting? And how do parents interact with you in a way that or how do you interact with parents, and how often do you contact parents?
I think that's actually a really good idea, because in the past I've used the system called remind.com, and I was actually thinking of doing it again. We had stopped using it in our district because students figured out that they could start groups and chat with each other unmonitored. And I thought, you can't block them from everything. They will find a way. And now they message each other either via email, or they'll start a shared Google Doc with each other. So it's like, they're too smart. Just let it go. Anyway, I think making it easier for the parents to access you is good if they're actually using it, and if you set boundaries. So, like office hours. I don't know if on Google Voice, I've never tried if there's like an autoresponder. But basically, if you say like, I will not be reachable after 6 p.m. or something like that, because some parents will abuse it. If you train them that you're available at all hours, they will reach you at all hours. But
I just turn off notifications for the Google Voice part, and that works. And I check it the next morning.
Yeah, that's good. So like, I used to check my email at all hours and reply at all hours, and I made that mistake, because then parents would get upset if I didn't email them back at midnight. Because they'd emailed me at midnight. So, but I think any way that we can get parents engaged, if you have 78% of your parents contacting you, following up on their student, especially if we're talking about like in a more high risk area, that is fabulous, because it's so essential that we get parents involved. And, I sent out a lot of email blasts to parents. I wish I could track how many of them actually read it. So that's the hard part. I send it through our learning management system, Jupyter. But I wish that there was a way to get like read receipts or something like that.
Sometimes when I send out email blasts, I do it through my email and never through Skyward or the whatever system the district is using. Sometimes I'll ask like, please respond to this email confirming I got your email address correct. And I'll get people to respond. That's what I do with the very first email newsletter that I send out at the beginning of the year. And then I continue asking that with people who haven't responded to sometimes. But this upcoming school year, I'm going to try to track kind of the frequency I hear back from parents. So before, I only kept track of if they had contacted me one time. I'm going to keep track of how many times. So that'll be interesting. I'm a data person sometimes. So.
Well, and with Google Voice, the nice thing is that, I don't know if you ever pull it up on your computer, the messages, so then you can just see the time and date stamps on there. So that's actually pretty easy to track that. I think it's a great idea to have them be able to, because that's how we naturally contact each other too. Like for parents to have to go into a learning management system and message you there,
it's just one more hurdle.
Exactly.
So, to talk about a wildly different topic.
Okay.
You are a Reiki practitioner, level 2.
Yeah.
First of all, can you explain what Reiki is? How would you respond if I said it was alternative medicine? One mode of alternative medicine.
I would agree with that. I mean, it is energy healing. And, we're all made up of energy, and a lot of times our energy gets stuck in certain places and we become out of balance. And when you're doing Reiki, it makes them all balanced up again. So it's kind of like, getting a tune-up on your car, but for your body. And especially when you're stressed out, it's really easy to become out of balance. You could become out of balance within minutes. And then a lot of times we reset when we sleep, but I can't go around sleeping all day when I'm not feeling, emotionally well. So I tried Reiki on my parents, and they're like, what is this? And I told them it's just relaxing. It's gonna feel good. And it's not for some reason people think of Reiki as, somehow akin to acupuncture, which is also energy healing as well, because it's with your chi. But there is no pain involved with Reiki. If anything, it's just super relaxing. It'll probably put you to sleep. You'll feel very well rested, even if you don't fall asleep, and you'll just feel more at peace. And so I started it so I could do it for myself, because I had gotten Reiki, and I was like, this is amazing, but I can't afford to do this every day. So how can I learn how to do this? And I found a class, and we did have to do it through Zoom, but we did what we call distance Reiki, where I can actually heal someone who's not in the room with me. And we tried that on each other. I've done that for other people, and they can feel it. And so it's pretty cool.
Can you do it to yourself?
Yeah, I do that every day, at least once a day.
Awesome. Do you feel like with topics like Reiki, certain interests as teachers, as public employees, do you feel like we have to keep it private, or, because of our occupation, certain interests we have, whereas if we were in the private sector, we might be more free to be ourselves?
I agree. I feel like, I wouldn't be ashamed to, if someone asked me about it and wanted to talk about Reiki, I wouldn't shy away from it. But I feel like things like religion and politics, certain aspects of it, I feel like we need to keep to ourselves, because we have to respect, I guess, what the families have raised their kids to believe. Yes, the kids are gonna, think on their own eventually, but I don't want a student to feel alienated because their views are different than mine. I don't want them to think, oh, Miss Lepre doesn't like me anymore because she believes this and I believe that. But that being said, there's still things that I feel are important that we do teach, such as how to combat racial injustice and things like that. There's some parents and some families that don't think it's that much of a problem, but I feel like saying that, if they say things like, oh, I don't see color, is actually a bad thing. We don't want to deny each other of our heritage and our color and the struggles that we've been through historically. And I think it's important that if it's brought up, if it's relevant in the conversation, that you not shy away from that. Because you can still bring it up without preaching. You can still start the conversation and probe and push a little bit and challenge the students to come to their own conclusions.
And we have to model that as teachers. We have to model thinking through something, having the humility to change our minds, and also I think we need to also model being proud of who we are and of our interests, without preaching, of course. I think that's really important.
I completely agree.
So I'm going to go ahead and go to the wrap-up questions.
Okay.
These 3 questions I ask every guest, so you might be familiar with them. The first one is, what is a skill or quality you have that you are most proud of, and what's one you plan to work on this year?
Ooh, okay. One skill. I'm going to tell you, there are a lot of skills. There are a lot of qualities that I'm proud of. But one that people seek me out for is my ability to solve problems. And so whether it's a problem student, whether it's I want to teach this, but I don't really know what that looks like. I still get teachers from my previous school who will say, I need help with this, or I'm having a technology issue, or I love to solve people's problems. I love it when they come to me. And if I don't know the answer, I love trying to research the answer. So that's something that I use in all aspects of my life, but I especially love doing that with teaching. And then something that I want to work on, they're kind of tie in together. It's the need to control everything and being impatient. because
Mm.
things aren't going the way that I want them to.
Hmm.
So that's like a lifelong thing for me. As an only child, I'm kind of a control freak. I want it my way. And a lot of times my way is the right way, or at least to me in my perception. And so um, when people challenge that, I kind of get bristly, but I'm learning to listen better, to open my mind to other people's opinions, especially when it's unsolicited. Because if I'm seeking out others' opinions, my
Mhm.
mind is way open. But if it's, we're having a conversation and someone brings up another way, and I'm like, I don't think that's right, and then I have to stop and say, okay, let's entertain that idea for a second, Kim. um, so I'm still always working, and I'm going to keep working on that, because I don't have the answers for how online learning should go. I don't
No
think
one
yeah, no one knows what is best. Even the schools that were already doing online learning before, like some charter schools,
does.
online schools like that, they just didn't have the same scale and issues. I mean, I think the assumption is if you are going to do an online charter school, that you have Wi-Fi, bandwidth, computer, all of that, or maybe they even give you a computer. But either way, I mean, try to multiply that by the number of students, and especially in the low income areas, we it's just hard to even fathom getting all of those
Mhm.
kids on board.
Yeah, absolutely. This online schooling is disproportionately affecting people who, or students and families who typically struggle with school in general,
Mm-hmm.
including all the list of, you know, students who differentiate for
Right.
English language learners, students with disabilities, students on IEPs, students of diverse cultural and linguistic background. They're all, disproportionately disadvantaged by this online learning.
Well, no, the reality of students and their attention span. I mean, I
Mhm.
had a student who full on admitted that he had split screen with my class and he was gaming at the same
Mm.
time. And
Mhm.
I can't really get mad at him. I mean, I can't control what happens over there. These kids, they could just have me on in the background while they're drawing or coloring or whatever. So, that's also part of the control thing, is we have to let go of that, because we can't really control what happens outside of our classroom.
Right.
Sometimes we can't even control what happens in our classroom. So we just have to, as teachers, we have to do our best to connect with students and teach what we can, um, and just let go of what we think is normal.
As a middle child, I'm the peacekeeper and also feel like I have an issue with control a little bit. Like not liking surprises, or I mean, I'm very adaptable and very flexible, but there's also the aspect where like I would like to control it if I can. So I
Right.
get what you're saying. Um, what is your self-care routine for staying inspired as a teacher?
Inspired as a teacher.
Yeah, like how do you stay passionate and on your game?
Okay. I think that taking care of myself and making sure that I don't oversaturate myself with teaching. So,
Mhm.
like I told you before, I don't take a lot of work home. I make sure that I take time to like meditate and go for walks and exercise, because I feel like when I'm physically and mentally fresh and on top, then I can handle challenges. And
Mhm.
then I also like to stay relevant. I like to kind of know what's going on with the students,
Mhm.
what they're into. I get to learn and they get to teach me stuff. I mean, I remember, with TikTok dances and stuff like that exploding, and the kids love to talk about it. And so then I'll take a peek, I'll say, okay, so suggest some TikTokers that I should watch. And then
Mhm.
I'll report back to them like, oh my goodness. And I mean, that's like instant rapport with the students.
Mhm.
And granted, not all the students have TikTok, and
Mhm.
if it's an appropriate video, dance video, you can show them, see, this is what we were talking about. And that kind of brings everybody in. And I also use like their interests when I'm trying to pick texts, especially nonfiction, because they're not really into nonfiction as much. So I have to try to make that relevant. Or when I use writing prompts or examples, when I take that time to research and then I get to see the joy they get from it, that just like keeps me going. It's just like, all right, this is fun for everyone in the room.
By the way, have you heard of the book? I did the best book study on this book called Nonfiction Reading by Beers and Probst. Have you read that one?
Yeah.
Oh, it was great. And I even felt like I could apply it to math a bit.
Right.
3 big questions. I made like a Cornell notes paper with the 3 big questions. What surprised me, etc. That was a great book study. I really enjoyed it and almost wished I had more nonfiction math resources to use it with. But
that's true. But I wonder, because I had a colleague, a math teacher, who did a lot of stuff with baseball and statistics and just even like simple things like, I have to put a fence up in my yard. Showed a picture of her fence. It's tipping over. And, she had gotten prices and quotes and had the kids like help her. So just ways to like apply what they were doing. And so even if it's like a manual or it's an article about like the best type of wood for your fence, and then they had to research like how much would that wood cost, and considering how long it lasts, when would they have to build a new fence, so which is the most cost effective. I just feel like if they can help solve real world problems like that, then you can embed that nonfiction stuff into there, because they have to do the research.
Well, and the best book study I did this spring when I was doing a ton of PD over quarantine was Up for Debate, which is specifically for math classrooms.
Nice.
Chris Luzniak.
Okay.
And he was talking about debating in math class, and I'm so excited to try it with students because it seemed really cool. He had one class-wide debate where the question was, which situation is best as a musician? To be an independent artist and make your own label, or to publish it with a record company, or there was some other options, but they had to research, the cost and the other benefits that were non-mathematical, but mostly it was systems of equations, and it was just really cool.
And the kids would totally get into that. They would love that. Yeah.
Definitely. They love sharing their opinions. So why not apply it to math, right?
Yeah. And make math relevant to them. Then it's not just like a bunch of boring numbers, just like reading isn't just a bunch of boring words.
And that it's useful in their life. Like, oh, I can use math to make decisions. So Kim, where can people find more about you and or topics you're passionate about?
They can find me in a bunch of places, so you can stalk me several ways. I do have my podcast, the Teachers Need Teachers podcast, which is pretty much anywhere you get podcasts, or I also have the website teachersneedteachers.com. They got rid of our podcast players on our iPads because there's, in Apple Podcasts, there are inappropriate podcasts, obviously, that kids could access. So, a lot of podcasts have a website. And I still have my blog, which is Mrs. Lepre, Lepre.com. And the topics are still relevant on there. And then I'm also on Instagram at Kim Lepre, Twitter, same thing. On Facebook, I have a Facebook group called Teachers Need Teachers. Cool. So that's all the places that I am now. What was your second question again?
Oh, just if you wanted to give a website, a favorite website or book about a topic you're passionate about.
In terms of like some favorite sites for me, for my go-to, I like The Cult of Pedagogy. I had Jennifer Gonzalez on my podcast, and I love how like real she is. She's not trying to make it all fluffy and rainbows, and she tries to find real solutions. She researched things, and I feel like her whole process is really good. So I think that she's really awesome. I also really believe in just going on Twitter, and there's so many helpful people on Twitter. You just got to make sure you search for the right hashtags. But if you have a question,
go ahead. Oh, isn't one of them one of the hashtags on Twitter that everybody uses for math? Or you're English, so
it's
maybe
MTBOS.
Yes, I think MTBOS, math Twitter blogosphere.
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. I thought it was math teacher blogosphere, but I'm pretty sure it's math Twitter.
I just know it's MTBOS. I've seen that.
Yeah. Great. Anything else?
I'm trying to think. Not off the top of my head for some reason. I just automatically have them like all saved on my phone.
Cool.
But yeah, just so I can easily access it. But just make sure that you reach out to other teachers online. Everyone is so willing to help and just give stuff away for free.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was going to comment on earlier that I love about this profession is that everyone shares resources continuously without restriction. It's great. And so on that note, Kim, thank you so much for talking with me today. It was a pleasure.
Oh, you're so welcome. I loved this conversation. It's getting my brain back into school mode because we start next week. So thank you.
Oh, wow. Have a great day. Thank you.
You too. Thanks.
Bye. Your time is valuable. Thank you for spending some of it listening to teachers of all kinds. I'm Mrs. Hood, and I'll see you next time on TAC.